and welcome back to the weird and the wonderful with Strange Bones. That's me. And good evening to you. As we start off, we are going to cover a couple of small things for the channel, just to remind you all. We only have one rule on the channel, and that is that we expect you to be polite, and if you are not polite, we will give you the boot. We always enjoy different opinions. We have a lot of different people that are on the channel from different backgrounds and religions and all, so we do expect politeness. We don't expect everybody to agree or disagree by any manner or form, but we do expect people to at least respect the differing opinions, but you don't need to agree with them. But any accusations, of course, as has happened in the past, will result in removal. That said, we encourage as much commentary as possible. Like, share, subscribe. If you would like to join on the live, you are welcome to request, and we can do that. And Snowflake is back. So we are glad to see you there. Much thanks for the likes. I love the enthusiasm. But the topic we are covering at the moment is one which I'm going to say does seem to upset certain people who don't like it all that much, because we are, of course, talking about witches. Now, bear in mind, we are not promoting anything. We are also not denigrating anything either. We are doing this for interest and for seeing what is out and around in the world. And to remind you as well, going to camp for the weekend. Well, that sounds freaking awesome, actually. It sounds really, really good. But nevertheless, do not worry, you will not miss that much. Sundays I do not do a live. And Saturdays is very much a roundup on the week. So you will only really miss a tiny bit and not too much. So don't worry too much. And we will definitely be here when you come back. That will be awesome. So I hope you have questions and comments and all for tonight. I am Bones, and as you can see behind, Strange Bones. Bones is in fact my name. So, and there is Endless Thoughts herself. Welcome, 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 welcome. Glad to see you back. I hope that things are going better for you and you are feeling more upbeat. Yes, my real name is Bones. Obviously, it's my surname. It's one of those strange things, I suppose. Don't know how else to say. But yes, glad you are all here, and much love to you all. Now, we have discovered that as we have moved along, there are important things to know when we discuss witchcraft. The first is the fact that there are two concurrent viewpoints, both of which matter very much indeed, because there is the viewpoint of those who are actually within the craft or the belief, so to speak, and there is the viewpoint of everybody else. And the two, on occasion, can be in direct opposition. Huge, huge thanks for those loves there, Endless Thoughts. I'm very grateful for it. And thank you so much for the hearts as well. That is awesome. You are such a star. But the occasions where the viewpoints of society are negative, even if they are incorrect, um, can cause a great deal of trouble for practitioners in that regard, as you can imagine. So, this can be very, very problematic, and it's important to keep this in mind as we go along. We have also discovered that you get different kinds of witches. We have not yet really touched too much on the very modern versions, and the reasons for that is their roots come from cultures we have not got to yet. But that said, we are seeing some of the first touches of that in tonight's topic, um, which is India. Now, the interesting thing is that this was actually a fairly difficult one to find much on. And the reason for it is that, by and large, India has been Hindu for many, 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 many centuries. And in the first place, it means that because it is a polytheistic religion, there's kind of pretty much within the religion something for anyone, no matter what. So you don't really get much outside as other beliefs, as it's been so established for so long. So when you talk about witches, you're talking about something very specific, as you will see. But that is not to say there aren't things that, in the very general view of what a witch is, we might call a witch, even though they are within the general view of um, the main religion. Um, Now, yes, you've asked a very important point, and ironically, perhaps, it's actually the witches themselves that got unalived more than anybody else. It seems that, yes, some people don't like that as a topic, but, well, I'm afraid I'm fairly hard headed. This is my life and my channel, so we will talk about what we like to talk about because we want to learn more. And if people don't like it, I never said they had to listen. So, tougho lucko, we are going to cover it anyway. But that said, there have been occasions, and there are occasions, as we know in South Africa, where absolutely it has and does happen to this day. But again, it goes back to terminology. Uh, are we calling them witches specifically, or do they have some special place in another way so they don't quite count as a witch in the specific terminology? It kind of gets difficult, and India is an extremely good place to see how this happens, which is really interesting. And I think this is going to be one of the most difficult lives, but also possibly one of the most um, fascinating ones. Now, we know for a fact that Hinduism is a very varied religion. By and large, at least in South Africa, um, there is your main deities, which I think most people prefer as their primary choice of guiding deity. And there are different groups that explain it in different ways, but by and large, we look at Shiva, we look at Rama, we look at Ganesha as being the sort of top three in many ways, and those associated, like the goddess Parvati, um, going along with, and of course, my personal favorite for all kinds of reasons, Hanuman, who really and truly is a wonderful set of stories. I will admit that I am not Hindu, but I very much do appreciate and enjoy the stories around Hanuman. And of course, as they move from India into China. Thank you so much, Snowflake. You are a great person indeed, and thank you. And I do understand it does tend to happen late for us in South Africa. Unfortunately, I have to do the lives quite late, simply because I've got people in Canada and such that listen as well. And of course, for them, I think now is around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So they'll probably only be able to even start looking at joining in the second half anyway, because many of them are still at work. Yes, I did guess. You obviously have at least two, if not three, accounts. So I did realize from your manner and way you've been talking that you were indeed Hayrance. So I'm very glad to see you on. I did wonder if you would be, because you said that it was quite possible you weren't going to be able to. I do hope your school day went all right, because you were quite tired yesterday as well, I saw. But all good, and as always, all welcome. So let's go back into very, very old traditions in India. And even back then, to a certain degree, it's sort of kind of Hinduism, though not the same as things moving along in that regard. I must admit that it's a very complicated situation, but we're going back to some of the oldest traditions and writings in the world. And of course, I'm referring to the Sanskrit traditions, which are truly, truly ancient. And all the way back then, you had the tantric beliefs and a kind of black magic called Kala Jadoo, which mixed with indigenous beliefs rooted in animism and spirit worship. So we do see immediately oh dear, okay, I will attempt to increase the audio. Hold on a brief moment. Ta-da! I hope that helps. But yes, please do correct things for yourself there, Endless Thoughts. And yes, Snowflake, Monday to Friday and Saturday is when we do things, so we will be very glad for that. So these show that most of the earlier traditions of witchcraft around the world even are very much animistic and involve spirit worship far more than they do established deities in that regard, and they sort of grow as they go along. These practices are particularly prevalent in regions like Assam's Mayong and the Khasi Hills, and involve rituals that can be either positive or negative, and they are often associated with very specific deities, cults, and spiritual powers. Now, they are not quite like European witchcraft at all. And these traditions share the use of occult practices and belief in malevolent and benevolent magic within a community. So it doesn't quite work the same way as it would in the Western world. But we are fine with that. We're South African. We're used to lots of cultures. Um, so the tantric practices are kind of occult. So within the actual religion, we can say that there is witchcraft, even if they are not specifically witches, which is sort of a different take on things, but kind of the same as well. Now, they involve rituals, mantras, harnessing spiritual powers for different effects. And we know that it's certain areas that are known to particularly go in for this kind of thing as well. So the tantric cults and occult practices are in Mayong or Assam, and that's a village that is still to this day interested and practicing these things. Now, in the Kazi Hills, they are particularly associated, and this is one which I think is going to be the cool part, snake vampire worship. I mean, come on, if you're going to do it, this has got to be the coolest way forward. Let's face it. Now, unlike the predominantly negative portrayals of witchcraft in Europe, and that is pretty true, and I would say in many ways, not just Europe, to be fair, um, the Americas as well, and in quite large parts of Africa, in a specific manner, as we have seen. Um, Indian traditions encompass uh, a sort of mix across dependent. The morality is less fixed in that regard. Now, these practices often engage spirits as well as deities and, notably, ancestral powers, which is again important. Big thanks there for sharing the live. I do appreciate greatly. I see a couple of people are in now that come in fairly often as well. Now, the problem here in India is where you often get a dual view. What the people doing the practicing think of it is very much at odds with what the broader society thinks of the practice. So here you see problems. So belief in witchcraft and magic, including the possibility of being accused as a witch, have been part of the social fabric in many Indian communities for centuries. And while they might not be against the specific doing of the occult, if they call you a witch specifically, they generally mean something negative. So, again, remember this is about words and terms. Um, and this shows that it can be something which can go pretty south on you if you're not careful. So, we do have to be quite careful of what we are referring to and how, just for that generalization, as it were. But moving along, because we do. Now, in India, they speak of a Dayan, which is a witch, or an Oja, which is a witch doctor, often women, often older, often single, or marginalized women who are falsely accused and targeted in acts of witchcraft violence, which are rooted in social, economic, and patriarchal factors rather than actual magic. And there is the crux of it. It's not whether or not you're doing it, it's whether or not you're accused of it. The practice of witchcraft has been referenced in scriptures as far back as the Sanskrit writings and the Rig Veda and such, but that's the practice. Modern accusations are typically a cover for persecution, often leading to brutal attacks and even unaliving, there you go, endless thoughts, of the accused by local villagers. And this actually seems to turn up in a number of cultures. Do not for an instant believe that this is an Indian problem, because we saw this is exactly what happened in Britain, America, Germany, Scandinavia, and South Africa. And that's who we've covered thus far. We haven't even gone to any of the other places. So, absolutely and immediately, you're seeing that very much it's a social thing whereby you're doing things to get at someone. Thank you, Bevan. I do appreciate it. So people are less worried about whether or not you're actually doing witchcraft as whether or not they can get what you got. And I'm going to say that that is one of the most human things I have ever encountered. Just saying. Now, so this is largely then a social phenomenon. It's about targeting people, especially vulnerable ones, who are seen as a burden on their community, who hold less social power. And women and girls from tribal communities, therefore, are the ones most at risk of being accused rather than anyone that actually might be doing anything. Now, the Oja or witch doctor is a traditional healer who may be consulted to identify a witch. Or to counteract the supposed curses placed by one. Now, right there, you see parallels to the South African experience. We've got the Sangomas and the Isangomas, the Inyangas, who do the good side and can counter the negative side of the Abatagati. We don't call the Isangoma or the Inyanga a witch. We call the bad ones a witch. So witches are bad, but witches are not the only ones who engage in what we technically would refer to as magic. So again, terminology, careful wording, because it does matter. Now, accusations, what does this mean? It, on the low level of it, if you will, we're talking social ostracism, violence, sexual assault, and on the higher end, murder by mob, which is pretty harsh. So there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of superstition, absolutely. We know that underlying causes can be land disputes, power struggles, manipulation of social biases against marginalized groups, which are the true motives behind these things rather than any concern over magic. We know that there are actual laws which we will touch upon, but they are inconsistently enforced, and many communities simply disregard them in real life, which does matter. Yay, you're back. Did you at least bring coffee, my dear? Coffee is required at the very least. Now, there is a great effort, at least, to try to shift things away in order to protect women and such. But it's slow and it's not very effective yet. We do know as well that what we would generally call witchcraft, the casting of spells and things, are mentioned in Hindu scriptures, but they don't call it witchcraft. It's part of other things. So we do have kind of witches without them being witches, because witches are bad, if that sort of makes kind of sense, I suppose. And of course, we know that the Hindu religion in general has a great appreciation for the spiritual and the university of life. So, in that regard, it's sort of part of the religion, um, which does matter. Now, moving a little along, we know that witch hunts not only have happened in India, they currently do. Those, as we said, that are labeled as witches um, are generally um, marginalized people. So, what causes the accusations? Crop failure, financial hardship, loss of livestock to illness or the death of family members, often instigated to serve ulterior motives like land grabs and property grabs, settling of personal grudges, or even punishment for a turning down of sexual advances. Um, Also, superstition does play a role as well, and scapegoats are often found, usually unsurprisingly, from the lower caste people. And we know that one of the things about India is that they do have a caste system um, that I do not think is going to change anytime soon at all. It's very important and prevalent right through their history. So it matters. Now, whether or not it's a good or a bad thing is an arguable thing. But according to the National Crime Records Bureau, um, over 2,500 people have been unalived in witch hunts between 2000 and 2016 alone. It's most likely that this is a too low a figure, simply because most of these things are never reported. Um, They usually face various forms of physical and mental torture, as well as execution. Severe violence is commonly used to punish, and it can include rape, beating, flogging, and even the severing of limbs. Um, They can be mentally and emotionally abused through ostracism, banishment, hounding, and public humiliation. So, this is something that has been happening for many, many centuries, with references to the Dhyans being found in several of the early Sanskrit works. Um, and unlike the witch trials in Europe and America, where victims are tried and recorded by state run judiciaries and such, details of witch hunts in India are difficult to find because mostly they are mob instigated, unofficial incidents that, legally speaking, didn't happen by any manner or form through law. Witch hunting in India wasn't really properly documented at all before the Santhal witch trials, which we will touch on, of course, and they happened in 1792. So extremely recently that you're actually getting much info on this. In colonial India in the 19th century, there were official records, and it was speculated that over this period, thousands were killed on the grounds of witchcraft in the Central Plains alone. It's also believed that even more were killed as witches than those who died through the practice of sati or suti. Um, and for those of you who don't know, suti is a practice which is now not allowed, but was common for a long time, where a Hindu widow would burn alive on her husband's funeral pyre. Um, whether these accepting of suicide was entered in voluntarily or by coercion varied, of course, but as you can imagine, it was not a good thing at all, and sadly, it was quite common as well. Witches or dakinis or dayans were usually identified by male practitioners and spiritual leaders, and these hunters, known as bopas or bagats, were consulted after members of the community, their relatives, or leaders of the village complained of suffering or misfortune caused by witchcraft. Once a witch was identified, the Bopas would attempt to free the victim from her power by using magic, exorcism, torture, and execution. For example, a popular method of torture in Western India was swinging, where the accused would have chili paste rubbed in her eyes and was hung upside down from a tree and swung over an open fire until she confessed to her crimes or promised to release her victims. Quite frankly, if that happened to me, I would promise to uh, release anybody for any reason and probably confess to pretty much anything. It sounds highly unpleasant. Um, In one case in 1886, an elderly woman called Kunku was accused of inflicting illness on a soldier's wife, and she was made to put her hands in boiling oil and swung for days before eventually being cut down and then murdered. So clearly, accusation was enough. You didn't really get any trial worthy of talking about. Um, so, as I said earlier, much more is it the witches being unalived than anybody by the witches. Now, there were several bans that were put in the 1840s and 60s in eastern India that tried to stop this, and in serious cases, uh, punishments for witch hunting could even include a death sentence, because it clearly was brutal and unkind. Um, it was problematic, let's just say that, and went very, very badly. But mass incidents of witch hunting often coincide with major rebellions as well. And this is important because whenever we have major social upheaval and the community is scared, it's then that you see people turn to looking for scapegoats and witch hunts occur. So in 1855, you had the Santhal Rebellion, and in 1857, the Indian Rebellion against the um, British colonial rule. And in 1855, large numbers of women were persecuted by Santhal leaders in the form of witchcraft accusations, despite their playing active roles in the resistance. And in 1857, and during the Indian Rebellion, witch hunts broke out across the region of Chota Nagpur, and the rebellion provided opportunity for rebel leaders to clean out witches whose numbers many suspected had risen under the benevolent power of British rule, leading to a whole surge across. And the problem there is witches then came to symbolize British power and therefore were a way to prove that you were against it, which meant they were hit even harder. Now, in the modern day, do not think for a moment this has changed much. People are peopling hard, as always. And while it's no longer legal, it carries on in the rural areas, especially in the northern central parts of the country, Jharkhand has recorded the highest total number of murders where the motive was witchcraft, with 593 being killed on these grounds between 2001 and 2021. So it shows that we've got some serious problems, and there is even more cases of witch branding. Now, what's even more interesting in this regard is that it is magic that is used to identify a witch. So, as you can imagine, this shows that what is called a witch is not what we think of in the modern day as a witch. So keep that in mind when we are talking about the varying problems in that regard. And they are trying very hard to end this sort of thing, very much so, because it becomes fairly obvious that there are issues surrounding that have nothing to do with the belief. Now, the Santal people, now these are an Austroasiatic speaking Munda ethnic group in the Indian subcontinent. Santals are the largest tribe in the Jharkhand and West Bengal areas in terms of population, and are found in the states of Odisha and Bihar, Assam, and Tripura. They are the largest ethnic minority in northern Bangladesh's Rajshahi division and the Rangpur division, and they have a sizable population in Nepal. Now, why do we care about these people? Well, it is among these people that you find a lot more of what we will refer to as the traditional type religions, which include, of course, sorcery and such. And with this, these were the guys that sort of led a number of the uprisings in India, and therefore were the harshest to attack witches, using magic, of course, and attack the British rule as well. So it becomes a kind of weird situation of both and neither. And it shows how the traditions of a specific people make how you look at things very, very rigid in many ways, and can become quite negative in some particular situations, though it's positive in others. It's difficult. Now, among the Santals, you have a number of totemic clans, and the clans have ranks as well. So the caste system is hitting in hard, and the different clans are quite important in how their life works. And of course, you may never harm your clan totem. It's very important that there are all kinds of rules around, and they're very sort of social society is semi-magical in that regard, because there are a lot of important rituals which touch onto ancestral worship, and on dealing with spirits. So in many ways, normal society involve what we would look on as witchcraft, but they certainly would not. Um, but it is a kind of traditional um, shamanic view of things. Thank you so much there, Bernie. Welcome, welcome. So, is it better if magic is actually part of society? Or is it better when it is separate to general society? And can we say the same of religion in that regard? Should religion have a say in politics, or should it be kept separate? I mean, this is an argument that has been going on since the dawn of time, and I don't think any country has answered it at all, to be honest. And it shows how difficult that is. We do see that the shamanic style of things happens in general culture here, and there are varying festivals that are celebrated, which include um, dances, drumming. I mean, is this not familiar to us as forms of magic, and a specialized kind of puppetry? Any familiarity there? So clearly, these things are woven into the society, and are part of everything. Now, in terms of religion, these days at least, most are Hindu, many are Sarna or Saridaram, some are Christians, a very, very small portion are Muslim, and then varying variations. Uh, and quite literally, when you talk about the number of atheists, um, you're down to just over 100 people, according to a census, um, which goes to show that most follow the traditional styles of things and keep at it. Uh, and even when they so-called claim to be a specific religion, it might be the main one, but also, and we see this in a lot of different societies, where even among Santeria, for example, in South America, they will kind of be Christian, but not because they've got extra bits. So, yeah. And of course, very important among them, um, you have a number of spirits known as bongas. Uh, you've got different ones, the Marangburu, the Jaha era, and the Gosai era, and so on, of varying ranks of spirits that are important to the different um, groups, and of course, the important people that have been deified, which is the ancestor side things. And these spirits have to be looked after by the Oja medicine man. So there is also the issue when not all ancestors or spirits are good. And one of the problems that they say they face is that there are evil versions, um, which need to also be appeased or dealt with by this medicine man type person, in order to stop them from causing harm. Um, so there are varying uh, groups, but the problem as well is these spirits are not specifically good or evil. They may, just as humans do, move between. So it's not like in much of the Christian viewpoint, angels are good, they're always good, that's how it is, and God wouldn't allow it otherwise, and demons are bad, and that's the end of it. It doesn't work like that here. Many do say that it depends. It just does. Which I suppose, therefore, makes it far, far harder to quite know what you're doing in terms of the spirits and how to deal with them. So you're finding entire ethnic groups that have these ancestral type things. And along with this, they've got very interesting practices. I won't go into detail of all of them, but every Santal village has a sacred grove or jaher, where the spirits live and where many of the festivals take place. It's a sacred ground set aside in the founding of the village and left undisturbed except at times of festival. And in there you will find a series of natural uncut stones to represent the spirits, but are not substitutes except during the festival. Then there is the Majitan, which is a raised mound of earth covered with a thatched roof, where the Maji's ancestors' spirits live. And in the summer, a jug of water is placed there so the spirits can drink. And most important decisions are made in front of it to include the spirits in the judgments. So we're seeing things which, certainly if you're South African, you probably recognize a lot of these things as being similar to the way things work with the magic and the ancestors in this country as well. We know that the rituals deal with the agricultural cycle, the life cycle, birth, marriage, burial, and so on, spirit offerings, and so on and so forth. And there is sacrifice to them, including animal sacrifice, though usually birds. And it is religious leaders, usually men who are specialists in the medical cures, who practice divination and magic. We are not saying witchcraft because, again, here to speak of witches is a pejorative term, a negative term, but that's just the word. Here we're talking about the guys doing magic for good reasons and therefore are not witches. Figure that. And this is common among many of these groups. Sorry, I have very dry eyes tonight. I don't know why. Now, each tribe have their own set of spirits and things. So there's not a lot of necessary commonality in exactly how things are done and how they work. But there's a general sort of commonality, if you will, at least. So they are essentially a tribe of witches, using witches in the term that we would, as a kind of belief system, not in the negative way. So, yeah, we have an entire tribe, but they don't call it witchcraft. And that distinction is quite important. Now, in terms of specific witches, is there such a thing? Well, there is. And it's kind of weirder than you think, because we are talking about Ipsita Roy Chakravarti. who was born Ipsita Chakravarti in the 1950s. And contrary to what you might think, and to show how things are changing, yes, she is a witch. Yes, she is a self acclaimed witch. No, she's not Hindu. She's a Wiccan. Figure that one. So, she is a Wiccan priestess and religious leader based in India. Now, even more shocking because of how things work in this very structured society, she was born to an elite family in India with a diplomat for a father and royalty for a mother. And she spent her early years in Canada and the US, where her father was stationed, and she was allowed to join a select group of women studying ancient cultures of the world and the old ways. And she studied them for 3 years and decided to become a Wiccan. She came back to India and got married, and she declared herself a witch in 1986. Amidst the backlash that followed her declaration, she explained to the media the neo pagan ways of Wicca and its healing powers, and she started administering the Wiccan ways to the people of India, including traveling to remote villages and teaching Wicca to the females, several of whom were thereafter accused of black magic and then murdered. In 1998, she campaigned as an Indian National Congress candidate for the Parliament of India in the Hooghly district, but was not elected. She released her autobiography in 2003 called Beloved Witch, and in 2006, a second one, Sacred Evil Encounters with the Unknown. And it showed 9 case studies during her life as a Wiccan healer and explained why different things happened. And they got pretty good critical acclaim in that regard. She was quite the activist, and if you know much about the really traditional India, you know that this is quite surprising for a woman. Things are slowly changing, but not a lot, not yet. Um, Now, she got into the entire idea of being uh, a Wiccan and so on, and she studied a number of different things, and she started with an academic study, as Wicca includes both scientific facts and old law, she said. We studied Carl Jung and Friedrich Nietzsche because Wicca means studying the layers of the human mind. Um, but by the end of the course, uh, we had to choose between Tao, Wicca, and Kabbalah as the practiced craft, and Chakravarti chose Wicca. She commented that ancient goddesses like Isis, Artemis, Hecate, Kali, and Freya uh, played an important role in her choices. While studying, she came across a number of prophecies left by the 15th century Wiccan Luciana, who was brought to trial for practicing her craft. Um, I'm just going to throw it out there that there were no Wiccans in the 15th century. They were witches. And they may have been what Wicca was based on, but I'm going to argue that Luciana was a Wiccan at all. Uh, Nevertheless, she managed to escape the castle on the Rhine that she was in, and Chakravarti translated the scrolls and believed that she was the reincarnation of Luciana and commented on this. I am she, I rise with the storm. I was killed and now I am born. On the winds of revenge, bloodlust and greed, I will avenge. Which sounds pretty dark, I gotta say. Um, and at the end of her study, she was given symbolic gifts of the mother goddesses who are worshipped by um, Wiccans. And from Athena, she received her black cloak. Um, excuse me a sec, my eyes are really dry. I do apologize for that. Um, and she received a crystal skull from Kali, a silver bowl from Venus for use in rituals. Um, but she didn't get um, given the amber ball of Hecate, and she was told that if you have been and are a true Wiccan, it will come to you. And she didn't get that gift for whatever strange reason, but nevertheless, she was involved in a relationship with someone that we probably all have heard of, Elvis Presley, who she met in Graceland through a mutual friend. And in 75, they went back to India. She lived a bit in Delhi and then moved to their home in Kolkata. And while teaching, she met Jayanta Roy, who she became romantically involved with. And Roy is one of the love childs of the king of Orissa, so royalty as well. And they had a daughter. Now, at this point, she decided she needed to actually do things, especially in West Bengal, where many people are accused of witchcraft and killed. And she declared in front of the media in 1986 that she was a witch. And as you can imagine, all hell broke loose. Um, Nevertheless, she pressed on with it, and because that she was well educated and had the social status, she got away with it to a certain degree, which really did matter in that regard. So we're seeing a lot of the cultural movement back and forth in this regard. And of course, as things went on, um, she did a lot. She really did. Whether or not it was worthwhile or had effect, I suppose, is very much arguable, and you will have to decide that for yourself. But one of the most important things of these kind of realities when it comes to social change, very often the most important and first um, movements don't actually do much of anything at all, but it's what they inspire for later happenings that make it really, really important. So we do need to keep that in mind, because certainly the plight of women in India is not great. Um, so we're going to leave our famous witch behind for a bit. Um, and we're going to slightly move on with this um, to have a look at something that speaks of a study of witchcraft in tribal society. And the reason we are going to mention parts of it is that it shows the viewpoints. Because the first line in its abstract is witchcraft is an ancient black magic and the art of tribal communities with its roots back to 25,000 BC. It's common in some of the tribal people of India where they believe that uh, divination and witchcraft for the cure from diseases and such. Mostly the male religious leaders practice this kind of healing method, and it is largely accepted, especially among communities like the Santal, which we mentioned. But if some become ill, they suspect and believe the attack of an evil spirit and will require witchcraft to cure them. But in some cases, witchcraft is considered the cause and therefore the one that cast the curse is sought out and punished. So, right away, you see that there is a specific viewpoint too. And it also says the government of India has taken some initiative and enacted laws for the elimination of the horrible art of the tribal community in punishing those and torturing to find witches. And this paper aims to study the heinous practice, how an innocent woman converted or branded as a witch, and the intention behind witchcraft and legal precisions for the eradication of it. So we immediately see that studies are being done as to what the issue is. And we see that still within the law today, this is to be found. Whoever practices witchcraft or similar practices with intent to cause harm or injury to any person shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which shall not be less than 1 year, but which may extend to 3 years, or with a fine which shall not be less than 10,000 rupees, or with both. Now, this is, of course, a very good start, but bear in mind who's to say what the intent was. So there are certain gray areas that immediately you see might cause issues. Now, the Dayan or Daini, is oftenly mistakenly regarded, they say, as a rendering for a witch in Indian folklore and Pakistani folklore. And the term comes from the Sanskrit word dakini, which refers to a female paranormal entity from Petala, the netherworld. And they are described in Hindu texts as female spirits in the train of Kali who feed on human flesh. So immediately you see that they are considered bad from the start. So if you're accused as being a Dayan, you are seen as not only a witch but a kind of malevolent spirit. They are somewhat like vampires by their feeding behaviors that requires the blood or life force of their victims. And it is said that the older Dayan sorry for that. Boink. Fixed. There we go. Sometimes referred to as Ekayan, are the very old version, and the source of a Diane's power is her very, very long braids, or choti, that are used as an additional limb. It can be flexed, stretched, retracted, and regenerated to do whatever a Diane pleases. Now, of course, this is one of the reasons why whenever you have accusations of witchcraft, the first thing that they do is chop off the accused hair, which shows that the hair is considered to be very, very important. And by taking it away, they're taking away the power. Now, how these things come about is a bit complicated. Obviously, this has a lot to do with general beliefs, but Dians are generally found around cemeteries, abandoned battlefields, crossroads, toilets, and squalid places. So, immediately considered to be connected to filth and bad. But remember, immediately that means if you're a poor person that doesn't have a nice place to stay, you might in fact be a Dayan. And you see immediately how being poor is bad. You see where this kind of thing goes. Um, so there are a number of views as to what these creatures are. And of course, their counter, as it were, are the yogis who also use supernatural powers, but they're not witches. And it's words. Again, right there. What you call matters. And of course, this can be brought back to the viewpoint of why we call the correct way of writing, and indeed in a way speaking, as spelling. The words matter. So immediately we see that viewpoints matter. They matter a very great deal, and not always for good reasons. Now, as we move along with this, we see that the supernatural in society is actually very common and very important, and does not always have to do with witchcraft as they tend to speak of it. Tantra and the occult are important and are in fact taught by Shiva himself. And in many ways, Shiva is the biggest sorcerer of all. And in fact, Shiva then taught this to the Devi Parvati. So practicing Tantra is not impure or cursed. The use of magic is not bad. It can be used for bad. So when it is done in the right way, it's absolutely good and part of good practices. Now, we do know that negative practices are only done by the Agori, the heretics. But again, it's all about who's doing it that makes it good or bad. A difficult thing. Now, we know that a lot of these important realities have to do with hair. And it is true that, especially among the women, many of them have very, very lovely, long hair. And of course, this matters because that's sort of a sign of the good bits. And the moment they believe that you might be involved in the bad bits, that hair goes. They will cut it off. So now, how is this dealt with? we've mentioned one of the laws, but in the 2013 Maharashtra Anti-Superstition Act, we see that it criminalizes the practice of black magic and the use of magic remedies to cure ailments that exploit people's superstitions. Um, so clearly, magic is considered to be a current thing. Now, you are not allowed to, in any way, encourage inhuman acts or human sacrifice in the quest of some reward. Fair enough. You may not accuse a person of practicing black magic or being an incarnation of Satan. So if you accuse me of being a incarnation of uh, Satan, that's illegal in India. Interesting. You may not claim to perform surgery simply by touch. You may not claim to change the sex of an unborn fetus. You may not claim to be related to a person from a previous incarnation um, and use this to coax people into sexual acts. You may not encourage acts that endanger life or cause grievous injury to gain supernatural powers. So there's quite a few things that for the Western world, you might be like, hang on, what? But here's the thing, and this is something which I call the sign theory. I don't know if it has an official name, but they've pointed this out. It is a genuine thing. I don't know if it's got an official name or whatever, but they say that if you see a sign, there was always sufficient acts to cause it to be put up in the first place. Now, so if you say, go into a place and there's a sign that says, please do not stand on the toilets while urinating, it pretty much means that quite a lot of people really, really did, which is kind of frightening right there. Please do not try to get in the enclosure with crocodiles. They are dangerous. It means that people really did. Okay, so this is true also of laws. So when you see laws that say, do not claim to be able to do surgery just by touch, people are doing it. And it's become a sufficient problem that there needs to be a law to manage it, which is kind of scary. And then there are a number of other laws that go along, and they say that in regards to the need of the Anti-Superstition and Black Magic Act, the aim was to do away with unscientific acts prevalent, note, in society that adversely impact on the community, to provide a life with dignity to all citizens so that no one is looked upon on the mere belief of irrationality, to prevent fake seers from exploiting the innocent, to prevent the assassination of anti-superstitious activists like Narendra Dabokola and Govind Pansare, which immediately tells you that is exactly what happened and why it was considered to be so important. So with those fun things going along, we see that there's a lot of concern. However, I'm going to add some even more twists to the story. The most well-known form of black magic in India is voodoo. Originating in West Africa, it found its way to the country through the slave trade. Voodoo rituals involve invoking invoking various spirits and deities to achieve the range of results from healing to protection to curses and to revenge, using symbolic objects such as dolls, charms, and talismans. So, black magic covers quite a few forms of negative things. And we see that black magic, known as Kala Jadoo or the dark arts, it's got a deep rooted history that goes back for thousands of years, and it is said to be powerful and malevolent in its practice, involving the manipulation of supernatural forces to achieve one's desire. It is a form of witchcraft integral to Indian folklore and has had a significant impact on the cultural and spiritual fabric. It goes back to ancient times with different tribes and civilizations that have believed in these things. And you will find references in the Vedas, the Puranas, and the Mahabharata, where it is depicted as a potent tool capable of achieving both good and evil. Ah, my dear, it was great having you along, and I'm glad you could be here for a bit. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Sleep sweet, please, and I hope I will see you tomorrow, if only briefly. Have a lovely evening. Now, in terms of there are varying practices using rituals, spells, potions, invoking and appeasing different deities and spirits to harness their powers for personal gain. Black magic practitioners, which are what they refer to as witches, are considered to have mastered the art of manipulating these forces and using them to fulfill their desires. Another popular form of black magic is Tantra, which combines again both black and white magic. Tantra is based on the belief that every individual has the power within them to control cosmic energies. It involves a complex system of rituals, including the chanting of mantras, performing a specific hand gestures or mudras, and the use of yantras or geometric diagrams to help invoke deities and channel their energies. They are often associated with sexuality and are believed to have power to awaken dormant energies and achieve enlightenments. However, the black tantric practices also exist, used to achieve negative results such as causing harm to enemies and manipulating others for personal gain. But it is important to note that the black magic is not universally accepted or practiced in India, and while it has its roots in ancient folklore and continues to be practiced by some, it's widely condemned and considered taboo in many parts of the country due to its harmful and unethical practices. Now, there has been a rise in recent years in black magic in India, and it's led to several cases of witchcraft related violence where innocent people um, were accused and subjected to physical and emotional torture. To counteract the negative effects of black magic and protect the innocent individuals, the Indian government has enacted laws against witchcraft and superstition in order to deter and punish those who engage in harmful practices, but also promote education and awareness to debunk myths and superstitions. In conclusion, it is a complex and multifaceted topic with deep roots in ancient traditions and folklore, and continues to this very day. It is so interwoven with culture that it is very, very difficult to separate it. So it tells us a great deal. Um, Now, we have varying forms of accusations of all sorts of separate things that may or may not be out there. Um, and if I can find my notes and if it lets me into them, we are going to point out how the dualism matters. Now, one of these particular issues is the goddess Kali. Now, on the one side, she's very good and she has a lot going for her that's quite important. Yes, she is related to death and all of those kind of things, but at the same time, there is a positive side, the cycle of life in that regard. But there is also a negative side related to what will start the Great War and end the world, so to speak, which may or may not be important. Now, as we progress with this, we are going to briefly talk about one of the places that we mentioned that is also very, very important in this regard. We are going to talk about Mayong village in Assam, which is located on the banks of the Brahmaputra River and has been considered the center of black magic and sorcery in India for many, many centuries. Um, just as if you're a Harry Potter fan, you will have known about Hogwarts, the school for young witches and wizards in the movie series. Um, but in India, this village is where black magic is taught. It's been referred to as the black magic capital of India, a very enigmatic village with mystical practices and legends that have been going on for centuries. So, what exactly is it? Now, we know that the village in Assam is ancient. The Mahabharata contains references to it, so centuries and centuries old. This area is crucial to the great battle of the Mahabharata and is thought to have given the formidable warrior Gatotkacha his magical abilities. The village is believed to have been the site of the tantric in Mayong, and witches who sought refuge in the Mayong forest carried out their esoteric rituals from then, in the time of the Mahabharata, right through to this day. So that's a pretty long time, and it's pretty impressive. Now, it was once part of the powerful Ahom kingdom, which ruled Assam for many, many years. In the 19th century, it came under British colonial rule, and the British attempted to suppress local traditions and beliefs, but it didn't work. Now, the origins of the black magic are unclear. It's believed that certain families in the village have secret knowledge, and spells are passed down through generations, giving this place its strange and mysterious reputation. Today, the magical in Mayong is a thriving practice, and there is a diverse population in the village, some still practicing the Mayong Assam black magic, and others with other versions. It's become a popular tourist destination, of course, uh, because of this. But as we move along, let us briefly pause for a moment and remind you all to like, share, subscribe to support the channel. We need your help, and while we have some very loyal and steadfast supporters that do indeed keep us going a little bit, we do need more. So shout out to Endless Thoughts and those who have supported us. But guys, please keep us going because there's so many more things to talk about, which I think will be great. So According to what is said, the local magicians, the Bez or the Oja, the, use natural ingredients and ancient mantras to cure ailments that conventional medicine cannot treat. They claim to heal chronic illnesses, snake bite, severe pain, using oils and plants and spells. They use copper plates to find the pain areas in the body, making it a unique practice that has gained popularity among the alternative treatment um, gurus, as it were. Now, close to Mayong village is Bura Mayong, another location that draws occultists and mystics. These sites create a mystical duo that heightens the region's religious and spiritual significance. But Bura Mayong completes the spiritual experience in the way it counters to and enhances Mayong village's ethereal atmosphere. Despite this, residents and tourists are no longer really afraid to go there, and it's become a pretty secure place to visit, largely because the locals make a lot of money out of it and they like this, so they don't allow things to get out of hand. So, what might you actually encounter if you go to this incredibly strange place? The Taman Bidadari waterfall, an absolutely stunning natural treasure encircled by vegetation and natural pools where you can visit for calm and the magical waters. You can also connect with the local healers to discover more about the methods of healing and experience it yourself and the fusion of magic and nature interacting with the Bez and the Oja. You can also hear about the legends and the history uh, with all kinds of stories about healings and tantric magic and more. But getting there, of course, is a bit of a mission. So you have to fly out until till you're in India, fly to Guwahati Airport, take a taxi to Morrigan, and once in Morrigan, you can hire a local taxi or auto rickshaw and finally get to the village, which is pretty tough. But get there you can. Now, Kali, of course, is not the only god in the Hindu pantheon. There are a great many, and some even go so far as to say there are hundreds of available different kinds of gods at different levels that may or may not be important. Just pop up my notes there. And we know that dependent on the different ones, there are major and minor deities, and they all have their place in this regard. You've got Brahma, the creator, who is part of the sort of trinity that goes along with Vishnu and Shiva. Vishnu is the preserver and protector of the universe and is very, very popular. And he's known especially for his incarnations as both Rama and Krishna. You have Shiva, the destroyer and transformer of the universe. Um, but remember that they are cyclic in their view. So destroying is not bad because he is also part of the renewing of things. And many Hindus look on him as one of the more supreme of the deities. You also have Lakshmi, who is very popular, the goddess of wealth, fortune, beauty, and prosperity. And of course, she is the wife of Vishnu. You have Parvati, the mother goddess and the wife of Shiva, and Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge, music, and art. and the consort of Brahma. Now, along with that, you have the not minor, but other important, if you will, Ganesha, who is hugely popular in South Africa, we know that, the son of Shiva and Parvati, Durga, the warrior god, who is a manifestation of the supreme goddess and wife of Shiva. Hanuman, my favorite, the monkey deity known for his courage and loyalty, and Kali, the goddess of time and transformation. Now, by and large, it is said, and how it is said and how it is believed does vary a bit, but it is said that, properly speaking, there is one universal spirit called Brahman, and all the different deities are actually different faces of this absolute reality. So to worship any one of them is the same as worshipping all the same one God in that regard. So there's that to consider. We have done you, so you need to go away. And we have... Now, if you are a soft person or easily upset by things, be warned. This next bit gets a little dark. And as we go about it, we say at the gate of 2025, we see that accusations of witchcraft are still continuing. Lynched hacks, their heads shaved, sexually assaulted, made to eat feces, disrobed, and driven through town naked. This shows that there is a huge amount of fear of witchcraft, but there is not a great fear of magic per se. It's all about the cultural viewpoint, and it is for that reason, in many ways, that perhaps the work of the lady that became a Wiccan and went and taught around India is so important. Because you need to start looking at what happens. We know that there is, on a not quite so awful scale, the same kind of viewpoints in most cultures. I mean, just doing these talks here on the channel, I've had people accusing me of being a Satanist simply because we're talking about this. I never said I believed in it. I never said I practiced it. I've never said I've done anything in that regard. I've never said I've promoted it. Nevertheless, people have become quite angry on some occasions, which goes to show that people feel very, very strongly, which might be an indication of just how much we need to be careful. And as was reported here, and this is something I think is true in many countries, we talk about the law, but there is no actual implementation on the ground. If you go to a police station and file a report, many police officers won't even know that the provisions to law exists. That kind of says it all, does it not? So Ipsita Chakravarti's actions, even if they didn't make any changes in and of themselves, are massively important in that they are starting to make people look at things. I am right at the front line of saying that if you commit crimes, then absolutely, no matter how you do them, you should be stopped and punished for it. But that's not the same as we go and accuse people of witchcraft and then do far worse. And in 2025, a story came out in August where 5 members of a family in India were brutally killed and burned alive amid accusations of the practice of witchcraft, which shows immediately that this is not an unknown thing. And it is the kind of thing that happens quite a lot. It's very, very possible that it can happen today. And part of the reason for looking at all of these things is seeing how not only there may be supernatural and things out there, which is interesting and curious and wonderful to know about, but we also need to know that there is a dark side to humanity, and superstitions can lead to quite a lot of problems. Now, in this case, between 150 and 200 people made up the mob, armed with sticks, rods, and sharp weapons. They caught and tied up 5 victims with a rope, dragged them to the village pond, assaulting and abusing them all the way. They were apparently half dead when they were doused with petrol and set on fire, their bodies packed in sacks and taken away on a tractor. Police official told reporters the next day that they were burned alive and their charred bodies were recovered from the pond. It basically shows that we do need to be careful of what we speak about. We do need to be understanding that it's a serious issue that goes on to this day. And while it's all very well to talk about these things in some countries where you're not going to get lynched, talking about them in some other countries might be a serious problem. Okay, enough of the dark stuff and the end of the particularly awful bits. In Hinduism, we do know that they're actually quite favorable about what we would call witchcraft, and even to a certain degree possession. But the traditional Hindu thoughts of magic and law was not without a certain respectability. The Brahmins themselves were possessors of spells, mantras, which even the gods are unable to resist. And it's true that in the Vishnu Purana, it is said, he who practices magic rites for the harm of others will be punished in the hell called Krimisa. It's the hell of insects. But the practices of the black art in India are objects of terror to the people. And this leads to the problems. According to the popular belief, there are many magicians, sorcerers, and conjurers in India, and a lot of the calamities of life are attributed to them. But it is worth noting among certain of the Aboriginal tribes, even those who are accused of being witches do not deny impeachment, but accept the position readily with all its penalties. For a sorcerer may be pitted against sorcerer, and the spells of one may be nullified by the counterspells of another. And we see exactly a similar viewpoint, though, of course, immediately this will upset some people. We use holy water, church ceremonies, consecrated relics, and priestly exorcism to fight against the negative forms of witchcraft and demoniacal possession. So, is it any different? Not really. As long as it's the right kind of magic, we're good with it. It's only if it's the kind that we are not happy about that we have problems. Anyone upset with me yet? But nevertheless, on that point, come guys, give comments. Don't feel you shouldn't. Now, we do know that Kali is seen as the dark goddess and a form of destruction in and of herself. And one of her aspects is the Kateri Aman, which is the spirit of witchcraft. And varied forms of witchcraft might invoke gods like Kali or Agni for the magical effects, as are seen in the Atharva Veda. Kali, being the goddess of time, death, and change, is known as the Dark Mother, and therefore absolutely the one with the biggest kick in this regard. Kateri Aman, one of her facets, is a fierce deity, noted for protecting children, but also portrayed as a witch-like entity, leading to associations with blood rituals and possession. An important figure in Balinese Hinduism, Rangada is a prominent witch figure that appears in the Barong dance, and this shows that Hinduism has its space within its religion for witches as we would understand it. There is also, of course, varying other things like Vedic witchcraft. The Atharva Veda contains a lot of spells and magical practices invoking deities for varying purposes, for all kinds of your societal magical needs. Rituals are described as invoking Agni and more for protection, prosperity, and even to influence romantic relationships. So, right there, we've got a number of things in that way. Now, there is no single goddess that is the witch goddess. In many of the Western things, there's usually one. At least in the modern views, unless you're one of these ones that bring in the witch goddesses of about 10 different cultures. But Hinduism as a couple in and of itself. Kali is the most known, and Prachangira as well. So these practices are not the same as what they call witches, but from our perspective are absolutely witchcraft. She's complex, if you are following Kali, in that she is dark and terrifying, but very, very much revered as being the ultimate divine mother, primordial energy, time, change, and cosmic power. She's often seen as negative by Westerners because she's got a garland of severed heads, a skirt made of arms, wild, disheveled hair, and more than one knife on her, which kind of imply that, she might be a little bit on the scary side. But then again, it's about your viewpoint of these things. So we need to keep that in mind so as not to spoil our view, if it if it can be said like that. Spiritually, she's absolutely top notch for the tantric practitioners, and meditating on Kali's terrifying forms is a way to confront and overcome fear, ultimately leading to the liberation and inner transformation. She can provide protection from misfortune, especially during practice, for her devotees. Because of her association with cremation grounds and fierce power, uh, she's often seen, especially in Western witchcraft, as one of the dark goddesses, but that's not true at all. Now, the next one that's important is Prachangira, known by names of Narasimhi and Asarvana Bahadrakali. And she's another goddess associated with the occult. She is very much a defender against uh, black magic, primarily invoked for this, with the power to reverse and repel negative energy, evil forces, and attacks. Her fearsome appearance is not unlike Kali in that she is quite scary. She has a lion's face and a human body, and is said to possess such power that when she shakes her mane, she can throw the stars into disarray. Worship of Prachangira is considered an advanced practice within Tantra, and should be only done under the guidance of a proper guru. So she's a dangerous one, even for practitioners. Now, Matangi is a wisdom goddess, one of the 10 Mahavidyas, and she is revered as the goddess of esoteric knowledge and occult wisdom, forbidden knowledge, especially, a patron of those arts that fall outside of mainstream religious thoughts, and a patron of music and art, done art, in that regard, and notable for the power of the spoken word, speech, song, and mantra, giving her domain over the most powerful magical effects of sound. So, very popular in that regard. Now, the practice of Tantra is not widely accessible, and it's viewed with in this way because of it's considered to be intense and could be misused. Hindu tradition also has protections against malevolent magic, and deities like the god Hanuman are called upon to remove evil spirits. And we know that in the Ramayana, he was an absolute boss when it came to sorting out the demons. So, very much so, an important figure in protection in this regards. In certain tribal cultures, such as the Santal, there are traditional beliefs in spiritual influences, particularly female ones, who can act as healers or trance mediums, but sometimes for all of their need and they are their youth, sometimes they get uh, accused of being a dayan, and that does not go well at all. Last but not least, we are going to conclude by saying that there are absolutely witches in Hinduism, and a great many of them. They are not all called witches, but they are nevertheless there, and it is a truly fascinating journey of social perspective as well, because it shows us how we consider certain forms of magic to be absolutely fine. We've got no problem with it. And certain other forms are absolutely evil because they aren't the ones we approve of. It shows how we can have a kind of cognitive dissonance when it comes to many things in society. And this too is very important. Because it shapes how we approach these different things. I could, if I was strictly speaking, being very academic about it, say that Christianity is no different to witchcraft. You've got a priest who performs rituals and invokes deities and spirits um, for the aim of improving life and so on and so forth. Um, Devotees go there to receive these blessings, to avert evil curses and more. They perform exactly the very things that witches do. But you see, those are ones that are acceptable and are seen as good. I find it very interesting how quickly people will, when they are Christian, and I'm just targeting them directly because it's the religion I know the most about. I was trained as a priest. I was a monk for 9 years, so I know about that kind of thing. I find it interesting that they justify extreme accusations and often even threats of violence because you see, you're evil and I'm good, and therefore it's okay for me to do this, which absolutely is a cognitive dissonance of note, and indeed is very against scripture in a great many ways. So, and let's be fair, uh, I accuse this of Christians, but show me a religion that doesn't do that as well. Absolutely. There are very few groups that don't go around offering threat to others. And usually it's because those ones that don't are too small to be a threat, more than anything else. So absolutely, you can see that the human factor plays a huge role in witches. And there is also, on the other side, a huge belief in the power of witches. There is an acceptance that there are forces within the world and without the world that absolutely are very important, that are part of the existence of the world in that regard, that in many ways are incredibly important to us, that we need on some level to answer to and to understand. And if we are ourselves specifically cannot do it, that we do have some kind of expert to which we can turn in order to do on our behalf. Uh, what we call a witch now very often is no more than a priest or priestess. And I do note that even though the modern neo-paganism and Wicca especially is very, very modern, already they've got specific terms that they use for those who are considered bad, which, as I've mentioned in previous occasions, I argue with in their etymological origins and viewpoints. But they've got their terms for the bad ones and more. So it doesn't take very long for any group to start theming and using. It seems to be a severely human problem. And we have seen that going along. The one night we had a long discussion. It was a really good one, I must admit, and which I did enjoy immensely. What would we do if aliens landed? And the general consensus was that as human beings, the most likely result of aliens landing would that be that we all get together and shot them? Because that's pretty much the answer that most humanity has to anything, which is kind of sad. And one of the guys that was part of the discussion said it sort of goes to show that the reason the aliens don't visit us is because that when they drive past the planet in their spaceships, they wind the windows up and tell their kids, we don't stop there, they're all crazy on that planet. Fair point. Hard to argue with. And deeply amusing in that regard, I do think. We see it done to our own people, so why shouldn't it be done to anybody else? But with that said, we are now reaching the end of India. We have touched on Santeria in Brazil. We have also touched on South African traditional magic. We have touched on English magic, which led us across the channel into the Chthonic regions and thereafter up into the Chthonic Viking regions with our search of witchcraft. And we are going to absolutely keep going in that regard. And I think perhaps we should start looking for a couple of places that might talk about the variety of magic that we haven't really encountered a lot of yet, which is that of the more mathematical varieties. And in that regard, of course, one of the principal forms of magic in that way would absolutely be the Kabbalic magics, which involves demons, angels, and many, many strangenesses. And of course, at certain points, the rise of alchemy. But we will get to such things in due times in the next lives that we do. And I think it will become very valuable to consider the crafts of magic in this regard, and how it might affect the world as we know it. But what do you think? Is there witchcraft? Is it real? Is there magic out there? Does it matter? Should we care? And is it something that would be of value to humanity in any manner or form? Give your opinion. You've all been terribly quiet tonight. I would love to hear more from you. Do give me an opinion. And of course, in that regard, tell me if there's any questions you have or places you particularly would like to go to next to find out more in that regard. Do let me know as we progress. But until then, I think that we are going to need to end off for the night. We are about at the end of our time. It appears that we have approximately a minute left. So, what do you think? Do you have any particular viewpoints? Do you have any particular interests that might need attention? And of course, if there are any particular issues in terms of the supernatural and paranormal that you would consider it to be fun to cover, do let me know, because I would love to hear from you to see your viewpoints in this regard. There are so many things that we can talk about. We do need to touch on them at some point or another. But until then, I thank you all, and I shall wish you all a very, very good night. And as I tell everybody, sleep deep, sleep sweet, but sleep with one eye open. Uncle Philip, yes it is. Hello, Anne-Marie. What are you doing lurking so late on the channel? I suppose for you it's early, isn't it? Yes, I know exactly who you are. I recognize your picture, you silly girl. You look exactly like your mother these days. How are you doing? Yes, of course, it's only 4 p.m. for you, isn't it? It's midnight for me. It's just gone midnight. Good grief. Um, so you've jumped on early for you and very late for me. Uh, we've been going since 10 o'clock, and we've been talking about all these scary things of witches and what have you. And we go around different cultures around the world to look at them. We've done aliens. We've done, what else did we do? We did curses. Curses was good. There was some creepy stuff there. Um, that was nice. We do cryptids. Cryptids was cool as well. Um, in the future, we'll certainly be doing other strange and mysterious things as well, just for the fun games and all the rest of it. So you must let me know what you think. And as I've been saying to everybody, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and all the fun stuff so that I can keep the channel going. It is important uh, in that regard so that we don't end up losing everything to the the fate of all unwanted social media accounts. Good grief. But until then, yes, it is very late. And Anne-Marie, I'm terribly sorry that you only came on as we were ending, because I would have very much enjoyed having you on to ask all your questions and make all your comments. And in future, you are always welcome. Know that. Um, you are absolutely one of the family, so always feel welcome there. But until then, as I was saying, sleep deep, sleep sweet, but sleep with one eye open, and possibly keep that holy object near at hand, because you never know. Those things that go bump in the night might very well go bump for you.